Watch this.
While we wait to see another school choice bill this session, we're asking if Idaho can do both: give a tax credit for private school tuition and fund public schools.
We could if we were actually funding education to the appropriate amount.
So what's the appropriate amount to pay state lawmakers? Some say they deserve a raise. Some others say, well, that sounds a bit tone deaf. We're going to read the room on the Senate side of the State House. We're also dropping by one of the oldest music stores in Boise to meet a man who hung around long enough to turn a gig into a 35-year career. That's long enough to see vinyl come back around and be cool again. The very first day of the legislative session, this legislative session, public money funding private education got the red carpet treatment at the State House. First, it was name dropped by Governor Little in his State of the State address. But even hours before that, there was a whole hearing hosted by an Idaho think tank and featuring state dignitaries, out-of-state dignitaries, and local lawmakers to highlight why offering a tax credit for school tuition would be a great idea under the guise of making Idaho's school choice more accessible.
Wealthy families already have school choice. They, regardless of their address, regardless of what their public school is or isn't offering, they can afford to send their child to another option. Low-income families don't have that opportunity, and this bill will create that.
Well, it's a bill or an idea they tried to create and make into law many times, going back to 2019. And every time, opponents poked holes in the plan because of cost, a lack of accountability, and, oh yeah, this thing called the Blaine Amendment. Public money funneled to private education, not allowed. However, as you heard, they're giving it a go again this session. And while that bill has yet to be revealed, the same people opposed to it are getting out ahead of it. From the average taxpayer to the Idaho Education Association. Then last week, a school superintendent spoke up, posting a 3-page letter to fellow Idahoans, he wrote. Fruitland School District Superintendent Stoney Winston laid out why a tax credit to pay for private school would not be a good idea for Idaho public education, or Idaho in general for that matter. From our constitutional obligation to fund a free and thorough public school system to the fact we are not doing that. Winston, who grew up in Cambridge, pointed out how Idaho already has school choice, just not everywhere. 19 of our 44 counties do not have a private school option. And he wrote, a school choice tax credit would only be siphoning tax dollars to subsidize private education in more populated places. Well, it's not school choice, but a funding mechanism, Winston and many others have called it, funding that is already in dire straits.
Biggest concern is public education is underfunded. We're currently underfunded with what we need to do. And the biggest place in which we're underfunded is special education. So private schools, home schools, they don't have to take special education students. We do. Anyone that walks through our door, and we're glad to do it. We want to provide those services for students, but they come with special needs and special challenges. And a lot of those challenges comes with dollar signs.
Dollar signs followed by a lot of numbers. Winston estimates school districts across the state spend an average of 14 to 15% of their funds on special education. However, prior to this school year, Idaho's special ed budget was underfunded by $80 million. For Fruitland, that deficit was nearly $647,000.
So that's a third of our discretionary money that we had to pull out and use to make sure that we have the services for special education.
What are discretionary funds usually used for?
Curriculum. We don't have dedicated curriculum. In fact, the only thing that we get for curriculum this last year was a grant opportunity, and you had to compete for others, and it could only go to one vendor. Right now, Fruitland needs math curriculum. They haven't had an updated math curriculum in a long time. Well, that's going to cost about a little over $300,000. If I didn't have to fund my special education at the rate that I do, then I'd have the money to do that. I don't currently. But now we're going to take tax dollars, and if you're saying that we're going to have $50 million in which is going to go to school choice, which really is a funding mechanism for public tax dollars going to private schools, then you're not addressing the $80 million deficit that we have in special education funding. If we're saying that we're going to be using tax dollars to fund any type of education, shouldn't we be fully funding public education first?
Not too many school administrators have spoken out against this idea of tax credits, ESAs, vouchers, whatever. Why did you want to?
I think it's important for the future of our education system in Idaho. One of the questions I keep on asking people is, what do you want public education to look like in 10 years from now? And today is going to be the deciding factor on what that is going to be.
Will subsidizing private education improve public education?
No. There's no possible way that's going to do that. That's like saying we should do this because we should have competition in schools. Well, one, education shouldn't be a competition. Public educators come every day and we're doing the job. We're, kids is why we do this. I mean, we want to see students succeed. Giving money to private education isn't going to do that.
We may be wondering how Idaho's special education needs are underfunded by $80 million. Well, 40% of those costs are supposed to be covered by the feds, but that hasn't exactly happened. And the difference has not been made up by the state either. It was a gap of nearly $67 million in 2023. Last August, in a State Board of Ed meeting, State Superintendent Debbie Critchfield updated that number to that $80 million, saying local school districts are subsidizing special ed to the tune of $80 million. Because of the shortfall in Fruitland, Superintendent Winston told us they've had to cut budgets for band, for art classes, and athletics. They all have to go out and fundraise more. Next year, he says they may have to cut staff. He also told us right now Fruitland doesn't have a supplemental levy. But if special education costs keep rising, Winston says he may have to try to get one, which would, of course, increase property taxes in Fruitland. So his concern, as you heard, like a lot of others, why are we talking about setting aside tens of millions of dollars to pay for private schools when we're clearly not paying for the public education to which we are already obligated? All right, here's another question for you. If you were offered a pay raise, would you take it? I'm sure most of you said yeah, without thinking twice about it, right? But what if you were a lawmaker and that salary was paid with taxpayer dollars? It's a question the 68th legislature is pondering this week after they were handed an approved $5,000 pay bump. Joe Paris joins me now. So Joe, the question then for you and for, I guess, them, do lawmakers have to accept this pay raise?
No, they don't. And it's actually a real intricacy that I'm curious how many lawmakers are super duper aware of. Maybe more, maybe not so much. A citizens committee, though, is appointed by the governor and the state Supreme Court, and they get to determine what pay lawmakers get. So lawmakers, they don't get to give themselves a raise, but what they can do is reject a raise that the Citizens Committee approved. It's an intricate process I'll describe. But first, last fall, that Citizens Committee, they landed on about a $5,000 raise, going from what was just under $20,000 to the proposal now of a clean $25,000 for lawmakers. And then leadership like the House Speaker, the pro tem, majority, minority leaders, they also get a little bit more. But all the lawmakers, by the way, I see this question sometimes, they get dental, medical, and life insurance benefits. Something, though, that some people in that building may not know is they're on a countdown clock right now to reject the pay increase if they want to. It's ticking as we speak. They have until the 25th legislative day, so about 2 weeks from now. And if before that 25th day, lawmakers in the House and Senate pass a concurrent resolution, they can reject or say no to the pay increase, and they would just default back to that previous pay, just under $20,000. That resolution, though, is now in play, and it's sponsored by Senator Christy Zito.
At a time when inflation is causing deep hardship for many across the state of Idaho, an increase of this magnitude is inappropriate. I ask you to be a shining example of compassion, strength, and leadership to the people of the state of Idaho.
Time's ticking. Will lawmakers move on this resolution or not? I guess we'll just have to see, but there are fair points to be made about accepting the raise. In a letter to the Citizens Committee back in the fall, bipartisan leadership wrote to the committee saying, quote, as the state of Idaho grows and the complex nature of the work of a legislator increases, it's important to put into context the amount of time the average legislator spends in their duty to Idaho as they serve the people. And it goes on to say that legislative work is neither truly part-time nor should it be considered full-time. So the challenge to this, they say to the committee, is to recognize the demands on lawmakers and compensate them adequately. And in that letter, they also requested a bigger pay raise. The committee passed on that. But former Senate Pro Tem Chuck Winder, he explained the concept of small financial incentive limiting the pool of lawmakers.
The salary is so low that it doesn't attract particularly young families that can come and afford to work basically at that level. So I think there's some reason here.
Clock is ticking. We will report back.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe. Banning flags in schools, Krispy Kreme catching on fire, and Green Acres food truck. That food truck park that's over there by the Greenbelt. The estimates move a little further down the Greenbelt, a little eastward. Just a few of today's top headlines, and Abby Davis will bring you the rest in today's 411.
The Fruitland Police Department wants people to know it's not responsible for the police body cam video Michael Vaughn's mom and a family friend shared on YouTube this week. That video shows a suspect in the case confessing to watching his wife bury the young boy's body in their backyard. Michael's been missing since 2021. This is the first major public update in the case since November of 2022 when the yard was being dug up. Fruitland police said the video was accidentally released in 2023 because of a public records request to the Washington County Sheriff's Office, where Stacey Wandra was being held at the time. The chief also said a suspect in the case reached out to them after the video was made public. Meanwhile, the Washington County Sheriff's Office said no comment. The Krispy Kreme in Meridian is closed indefinitely after a fire broke out in the building just before 11 last night. Meridian Fire says the fire was quickly put out and no one got hurt. They're still trying to figure out how it started.
I've witnessed the so-called pride flag displayed in many classrooms I visited as a substitute. To me, the flag and similar emblems represent a distinct sexual proclivity. I've never witnessed heterosexual proclivity flags anywhere in the schools in my substitute journeys. If I had, I'd be just concerned and against it.
The reality is that such restrictions would significantly harm the values of representation, inclusion, and free expression that should be at the heart of our education system.
The Senate bill banning most flags in Idaho classrooms made it out of committee today. The bill bans any flag that is not the U.S. flag, state flags, or other approved government flags, with an exception for tribal flags and school flags. A repeat bill from last year with the exception of allowing school flags and banners, as well as explicitly saying no displays for any political viewpoint. But there isn't any listed punishment if you don't comply. The bill is headed to the House. Green Acres Food Truck Park is moving. Before you get all worked up over Boise's only food truck park, the new location is just a 3-minute walk down the Greenbelt next to Payette Brewing. This way, the park can become bigger and better. It should open back up in the spring. That's the 411 on the 208. I'm Abby Davis.
You know, the Record Exchange knows a thing or two about longevity. As the longest-standing record shop in Boise, it's fitting the people who work there also tend to stick around a while as well, like 35 years, 20 of those running the place. Aspen Shumpert stopped by to hear John O'Neill put him on the record, as it were, about his love for music.
To most people, 35 years is a milestone. But for John O'Neill, it's just another day at the shop.
I lasted 35 years in this business at this store by just showing up every day.
John's own music journey started when he was young.
Played paint cans on the drums and sang.
And some of the earliest memories are around his family and music, sparking a lifelong passion.
My siblings all had their records, and I listened to and ruined them all, and have been surrounded by it. I hesitate to say an obsession, but it's been a focus of me. It was the first inclination that I had that it was like something big in me.
With no clear path after high school, John bounced around temporary jobs in Oregon, making music on the side. Eventually, he and his wife, who was pregnant at the time, moved to Boise.
The thought of leaving my, not taking part in my child's life was like anathema to me.
So John says he stopped pursuing music.
Didn't really come and hang around the record store because that was not what I was supposed to be doing.
Trying to switch gears to a more traditional career.
The focus of my life was to man up, man up, and get with it, get the job.
But several months later, he was told to apply at the record exchange. He says he just couldn't resist.
I remember the date that I was hired at the record exchange because it was my mother's birthday. And I was happy to be able to call them and give them the news that I'd actually found employment, because it was a rough winter without an income.
In a blink of an eye, 35 years have gone by.
It smells the same, that mixture of incense, coffee, and musty cardboard.
He's seen the music industry's dramatic shifts, from the CD boom to the vinyl resurgence.
LPs, they'd never gone away. They'd receded to the back wall, and they were hanging out back there. And then as the demand rose, the CD section started to shrink. The amount of floor space that's dedicated to LPs reflects how much of our sales have to do with that. I don't know, we're looking for ways to cram even more LPs into this place.
Through it all, John has remained a constant in the record exchange, getting to feed his obsession every day.
I do it because I love it, and I love the store. I believe in the power of music to change your life and lift you up and make you a better person.
We found out about John's 35-year accomplishment through a social media post his team made. And while we were there today, a few of them said they hope he doesn't leave anytime soon. John says he's pushing for 40 years, and this week he's been overwhelmed with the amount of stories people have come forward and shared, and he's enjoyed kind of looking back at history.
Yeah, go out and get a real job. And he ends up working there for 35 years.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, thanks, Aspen. Too early, too cold to consider camping? Not for those who know how tricky it is to nab a site in season. And for those who tried to be early birds, well, the state's new reservation system didn't exactly help, which left some of you with questions. Maybe you have questions. Well, send them to us. You can also talk to us about anything else we've talked about on today's show. The number, 208-321-5614, and include your name and the hashtag #the208.
We have a bright and blinding sunset happening right now for all of these drivers inching along the connector. Still a pretty pleasant evening. No wind to speak of. We're sitting at 40 degrees in Boise right now. Skies stay clear this weekend, or this evening, I should say, and all the way into the weekend and beyond. But then we turn our attention to some very cold temperatures setting in by Saturday. Sunset tonight is about 16 minutes from now. Officially, we'll dip down to the freezing mark by about 9 o'clock or so this evening. We'll wake up to temperatures in those low to mid 20s again. Not much change from this morning, but the change for tomorrow is that by midday into the afternoon hours, behind a morning cold front that may drop a dusting of snow on the central mountains, we have a very cold wind that will set in out of the northwest. So while high temperatures tomorrow still stay around 40 in the Treasure Valley, mid 30s in the Magic Valley, we could see gusts upwards of that 30-mile-per-hour mark the closer you get out into the Magic Valley. Partly cloudy skies in the mountains with mid to upper 20s on deck temperature-wise tomorrow, and again a quick shot of snow during the day, not amounting to much in the way of accumulation. Saturday morning, first alert weather conditions for our first time seeing readings in the teens in Boise. We stay frigid all the way through next week. Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday. Those high temperatures will struggle to even get to the freezing mark.
Went through the whole thing, went to hit like pay.
It spins for a minute and came back, and there's the alligator. Oh, that's strange. It looks like an alligator ate your data.
That's when I got the like gator of like, oops, like your data's gone. We don't know what's up with that.
I'm like, whoa, that's weird. Never seen one of those.
To me, or does it sound like his dad is gone? No, he said his data is gone. Okay, anyway, it's been more than a week since Idaho Parks and Recreation rolled out a new campsite reservation system. Thankfully, the gator's gone. People are experiencing fewer glitches trying to grab a favorite camping spot. But it still brought up a good question from Chris, who asked, who's behind this reservation shift? The old system seemed to work. Is the new system local? Did it come from the State House? Well, Chris, we talked to Idaho Parks and Rec, and they said the switch was totally their call, no political agenda.
It's about us and the customer service and a system that can meet the demands of so many people wanting reservations, like Ponderosa State Park, the 4th of July weekend. I mean, 4,000 people, booked. It was booked in minutes. So that's the kind of demand, this system can handle.
Yeah, it's a burden for sure. They switched to a system called Idaho Time. The new site is simpler. It changes the prices based on those busy demands, or those busy weekends and the demand. Shows information on each site, plus it's smartphone friendly. The new website is designed by a company called Brant. Parks and Rec says the developer lives in Boise, and they've helped other state agencies like Idaho Fish and Game develop theirs. So there you go, Chris. And sometimes you actually can fix what ain't broken, only to have it break, but then you got to fix it again. It's all fine. At least it is for now. All right, let's get to your comments today quickly here. Evan in Ada County says, it isn't about school choice. It's about gutting the public school system and moving funds to private entities. What a scam. Meanwhile, Susan says, thank you, Superintendent, for your letter. Finally, someone acknowledging special education. Take care of funding the current system, politicians. You owe all kids adequate education. Subsidizing private education is not fair. Rewarding pay increases based on doing your job fairly and serving all the people in Idaho would get my support. Sadly, the majority of our legislators don't do that. They spend their time chasing crazy ideas, working on special interest legislation. That one from Deb, it looks like. And this one from Lori says, sounds like legislators and teachers are in the same boat. Too many hours required to do the job well, inadequate compensation. It'll be interesting to see who gets their pay raise first. Finally, if a pay raise could get us brighter legislators, I'd give it to them. Good idea.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.